Okay, the final book I'm going to talk about in this series is the most important, without a doubt, and it's the Neuro-based Trainer by Marcus Wynne. Now, way back, years before I met Marcus, he was very keen on martial arts, and he was writing articles for Black Belt magazine. And one of the things he did was to interview Bill Wallace, the champion competitor. And Bill Wallace was renowned for his left leg kick. And one of the questions that Marcus asked him was, how many repetitions of the kick do you do in your training on the bag? And thinking, he'd come up with several hundred. And Bill said 50. He said, just 50 a day. He says, yeah, but I throw every one as if my life depended on it. And that was kind of a light bulb moment. Marcus told me that story years and years ago, and it resonated with me as well. And it kind of made big changes into the way I viewed training, particularly the intensity of training. I've told a story before about being in a gym, and there was a notice that if you could kick the bag for an hour repeatedly, then you won a t-shirt, or you qualified for a particular t-shirt. And at first I was impressed by this thing, continually kicking for an hour. And then I thought, well, what kind of kicks are you doing after half an hour, after 45 minutes? It's not really that. And I'd rather have somebody kicking 10 times with full intensity, as if their life depended on it, and you get more value out of it. If you want to do cardio stuff, do cardio, do push-ups for an hour or something like that. That's fine. The other thing that Marcus brought up was that it's very easy, or relatively easy, to teach people to shoot. The physical skill of manipulating a firearm and hitting a target, it's not a difficult process. But there is a big difference with gunfighting. That's a whole different topic. And a point that both of us have made over the years is that you can qualify as having been through the training of many major law enforcement training centers, go through the whole program, get a certificate at the end of it, without ever once having been in the same mental state that you would be in an actual violent confrontation. And that's the thing that's missing from a lot of the programs. So one of the challenges was to put that into the training. As Bruce Lee said, with emotional content. If you involve the emotions, particularly the relevant emotions under stress, you make the learning much more deeper and much more relevant, and it sustains the learning. We were in South Africa, and I remember during a break in a class, a chap came up to Marcus to show him the handout that he'd been given in the mindset training he'd received in the South African police, to sort of show Marcus how advanced they were. And Marcus pointed out that the handout was actually just a photocopy of an article that Marcus had done on the OODA loop for Combat Handguns magazine. So his material was being quite well received, even though often the guys didn't know where it came from. One of the things that Marcus worked on became the Nikita project, training the women. And I was probably one of the first to see the results, because a lady called Rosie, who he taught, who was the kind of pilot for the whole program, came along to a bodyguard course we did, and without any previous experience at all, she performed amazingly, absolutely amazingly, alongside SWAT team members, and big eye opener to me because it was breaking the bounds of what was normally considered possible. Another aspect, oh, Marcus took this training, and I remember staying with him in Minneapolis in his small apartment, and he had this butcher paper up on the walls everywhere, and he was writing all this stuff down and creating the models for what later became his program, later became this book, in fact. And he was working on it really hard, and he's drawing stuff in from many, many different sources. And he eventually ended up presenting all this material to NASA, the space agency. Now, NASA were the lead agency for critical incident performance because they'd had a disaster. And one of the things about the shuttle disaster was that even after the explosion and the module was falling to the earth, the telemetry back at base showed them that the pilots were still trying to fly it. They were making decisions, they were carrying out procedures, even under the most terrible circumstances. And this kind of demonstrated that the path that NASA took, using people like Marcus, was the right path. And I went to a presentation by an FBI instructor, and he referenced NASA as being the lead agency in this subject. And Marcus was one of the architects of that. So all this material has been gathered together. Our good friend Peter Morgan curated it and edited into the present book, and it's now available for people. The book is full of material that you can take away and use. It tells you exactly how to perform the neural-based training, and it really has revolutionized the training world, rather stealthily, because a lot of people really haven't been aware of it yet, and I'm sure it will start making an even more significant impact than it has. The people who have been exposed to this kind of training understand it very, very well. I presented some of Marcus's base material called the Mind's Eye program in Switzerland, and one of the chaps came up to me. He's a very well-respected instructor in his own right, and he said to me, "This is the most important training I've ever received." And all credit to Marcus, it wasn't my material. So training is about change, and this book has changed the training model. And really, any instructors of physical skills should be aware of this, should buy the book, and should certainly put the stuff into practice, because we as instructors owe it to our trainees, our students, to give them the best that there is, and this stuff is the best that there is.